Hello there, Mad Mike here, and welcome back to the channel. So today I'm going to go over the Comic Con Hall H panel that Marvel did last night, where they premiered a majority of Phase 4 for the MCU. And I'm going to go into everything, including the TV announcements, and because they do tie in with the films, even though I'm going to kind of glaze over most of the television stuff. So, uh, first off, uh, they came out, they announced a majority of the films. There were a few films that were not given dates. Um, now, I believe they're saving this for probably D23, which I can't remember exactly when that's going to be taking place, but it'll probably be sometime relatively soon. Kevin Feige did mention Black Panther 2, Captain Marvel 2, as well as the beginning of projects on Fantastic Four and X-Men. So aside from that, let's dive into this. And the first thing, which is the thing that was probably the most done, I would say, would be the Black Widow announcement. Now, Black Widow, the well, not the announcement, but the premiere sort of the Black Widow film. So they had Scarlett Johansson come out there. They also confirmed that there's going to be another. I can't. I believe she's another Black Widow from the comics. Yelena. I think she was the first Black Widow, or the second in the comics, and but apparently she's going to be in the movie. They did confirm that the villain will be Taskmaster, and from the footage they showed, at some point he will have the sword and shield like he does in the comic books. So that should be at least relatively interesting. Black Widow is confirmed to come out on May 1st of next year. Now, next year, the other thing that's interesting is Marvel has been doing 3 movies a year for the most part for the last 2 to 3 years. And yeah, I think for the last 3 years, I think they've done 3 movies a year. Next year, it will only be two: Black Widow on May 1st, and then Eternals on November 6th. Now, the other thing with Black Widow is they're basically saying that they've already confirmed this film takes place before Endgame. This is going to take place probably even before Black Widow comes into the MCU in Iron Man 2. This is going to take place well before that. So chronologically, it's going to be kind of like a Captain Marvel in that respect. And aside from that, there's not really much more. Pretty much all the stuff that we knew about the film was relatively confirmed. People had suggested that it was either Taskmaster or maybe Paladin, or one of those characters that was going to be the villain. So we have Taskmaster, which is a strong villain, and I'm more than okay with that. But now we move on to one of the more interesting ones, and that is the Eternals. Now, with the Eternals, we had the cast that was revealed. So the cast for Eternals, the headliners really are going to be Angelina Jolie, Selma Hayek, and Richard Madden. However, we also have a whole cast of characters that's also behind them. And Eternals is going to be one of those. It felt a lot like when they announced the first Guardians of the Galaxy. And had the cast and stuff come out that Comic Con. It feels a lot like that, where this is an ensemble piece, and this is gonna be something that's probably set in the distant past of the MCU, given the comic origins of the Eternals. So the only thing that I have about this is that they played certain notes in the crowd according to what I have read. I have not seen a whole lot of the Hall H panel, um, but it appears that Salma Hayek went on a bit of a diversity rant and a representation rant. I shouldn't say rant, but speech. So I'm a little concerned that that might wind up turning into a Brie Larson thing, where we start seeing a lot of this preachy crap, especially on the press tour for the film. But I withhold judgment on that. It's one panel, and we'll see how things are going forward. I think it's an interesting premise. I think they're going to use this to set up the mutants like they did in the comic books, and I would be interested to see when the first trailer for this comes out. Now, it is coming out in November of next year, and like I said before, the only two films that are coming out in 2020 are Black Widow and The Eternals. So now that we move out of that, we move into Shang-Chi. Now, for this movie, they have announced a few actors that are going to be in it. Simu Liu, and I hope that I'm pronouncing that correctly, is going to be playing the title character of Shang-Chi. And we also got kind of a surprise where Tony Chu Wai Long, I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly, is going to be playing the Mandarin. Now, if everybody remembers, back in Iron Man 3, we had kind of a bait and switch where Ben Kingsley came in to play the Mandarin, but in reality, it was actually a subversion, and Guy Pearce was the real "quote unquote" Mandarin. There wasn't like a Mandarin from the comic books. Apparently, this movie is going to correct that, and we are going to see an actual Ten Ring storyline with Shang Chi. So that is a little interesting. I figured they'd leave that character behind after Iron Man 3, and they just wouldn't acknowledge it, but. It seems like they're going to do that. Now, Shang-Chi is going to be coming out in 2021, and this movie is going to be the first of the Marvel films of that year. It's going to be coming out the 12th of February, which is very early. I'm kind of surprised that it's going to be coming out in February. I figured they'd push it forward to March. But they are balancing out three films that year, so maybe they're spacing them a little further apart because of the clumping of the last, mainly this year, where you had Captain Marvel, Endgame, and then Spider-Man. So after Shang-Chi, which again is we all knew that was going to probably be announced because we knew that they were casting and stuff, and the script had been written. So after Shang-Chi. Now, with Doctor Strange 2, the director came out, Scott Derrickson, and explained that this is going to be kind of an MCU style horror film in a way. This is going to be based more in kind of a horror-ish tone. Now, knowing Disney, they're not going to go full on because they refuse to make anything that's made for anybody with any kind of adult tastes in certain ways, because they won't go rated R in a lot of cases. I don't think they'll go rated R with this particular franchise, especially because the first one was kind of upbeat a bit. But we have confirmation that Benedict Cumberbatch is going to be coming back. We didn't really get that much of a story tease, but from the title, Doctor Strange in the Multiverse of Madness, they're taking a. This is kind of a tongue-in-cheek title, which I'm a little. Curious why they chose to go with this, because it seems like it's taking off of In the Mouth of Madness, which was a John Carpenter film from the 90s. So I understand that they're going to try and go with the horror-ish tone, but it seems like this is a bit of a rip-off title. I don't exactly like the title. There are titles this year that did not come off very good. The only exception I would say is probably Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings. So the other thing that they confirmed about this is that it's going to heavily feature Elizabeth Olsen's Scarlet Witch, which is interesting because, again, those are your two major magic-based characters in the MCU right now and the other thing is that's going to be interesting is this is supposed to be tied directly into the WandaVision television series that is going to be going on Disney Plus. Now, something that we learned about that series, and I'm sorry if I'm skipping around, but the two projects seem to be very closely tied together, where WandaVision comes first, and then we go into Doctor Strange 2. So they've confirmed. Paul Bettany came out, and and Elizabeth Olsen, and they confirmed that the show is supposed to take place after the events of Endgame. So Vision is still dead as far as we know. He hasn't been brought back to life, and Paul Bettany even stated that he had no idea how he had been brought back to life. Obviously, it's obviously he's not going to say anything, but because it's a show spoiler. But it seems like they're going to bring Vision back from the dead, which I think is probably a good choice. I liked him as a character. I like Paul Bettany. You know, he's been in the movie since the first Iron Man as the voice of the Jarvis AI unit. So I think it's a smart idea to bring him back. I think you can explore him a lot more. I think you can develop that relationship that he has with Scarlet Witch. So I'm curious about that. But I think that's a good idea. But they've stated that somehow that directly goes into Doctor Strange, and it's possible that Doctor Strange shows up in the WandaVision series, and that's kind of how they set that up, and then that goes in. This is the only thing that I kind of have issues with, to a point, is that I don't really like it when you have television properties that are so deeply tied into various film properties. Because the thing that was great about the MCU was that, you know, you could watch all the movies. You didn't necessarily, you get the expanded story, and you get to see, you know, the big moments with the Avengers films and stuff like that. But it's it feels like it when it came to the television properties, they took place. Some of them took place in the same universe, but you could watch them, and you didn't have to. They didn't necessarily link directly in. It was in the same world, but you didn't need to watch the television shows to understand the films. In this case, it seems like they're making it so that if you want to understand all the elements of Doctor Strange 2, you have to watch the WandaVision television series. And it feels a lot like when they do the tie-ins in the comic books. So that's a little concerning. We also had confirmation uh, of a Winter Soldier Falcon series, which again we knew when they had Anthony Mackie and Sebastian Stan come out, and it's basically going to be kind of like a buddy cop type of thing, in a way. So we had that, and then we also moved in to some other television properties. Apparently, Marvel is going to be doing an animated version of What If for the MCU. Now, for those people that are not familiar with What If, that is a comic series that explores what if X happened in the Marvel universe. So, you know, there's ones like what if Spider-Man never left the Secret Wars world and never got the symbiote removed, or what if Civil War in the comics had ended differently. So, but they're going to be exploring that with the MCU in animated form. So that's actually kind of interesting, because I like the what if style, and I think that would be a good idea for a television show. So, and this is actually the MCU's first foray into actual animation that is linked to the MCU. So, again, that's interesting. I think that'll be good, depending on, you know, how who's writing the stories and what the subject matter is. But it would be interesting to see. Uh, and so now that we're through with some of those television properties and Doctor Strange 2, we then go into the last movie that is coming out in 2021, which is Thor 4 slash they actually gave a title which seems kind of like a joke title to me, which is Thor Love and Thunder. Now, obviously, I think that's their official title for the time being. That could very easily change. These things do change before films go into production. So for this, we had a little bit of a surprise, and not necessarily a good one. Was that we had Chris Hemsworth and Tessa Thompson and Taika Waititi come out, which I think everybody expected. They knew they were going to be coming back. And surprisingly, Natalie Portman came out as the Jane Foster character, which explains a little bit, considering we saw some new scenes that got filmed with her, apparently in Avengers Endgame. Some of them were cut. However, I believe there was one new scene with her that was filmed and that was left in the movie. But it explains a bit why they brought her back in that sense, or they tried to, because they were going to try and reintegrate her. Now, apparently, she becomes the female version of Thor in this fourth movie to some extent. What I am hoping this is Taika Waititi plays this for laughs, and this is a small portion of the film where she holds Mjolnir because Thor still has Stormbreaker. So, or something like that, or they make a new Mjolnir or something. But I hope they play this for laughs. I hope this is just kind of like a joke thing where she has the hammer because the female Thor is not very popular in the comic books at all. The fact that they're integrating her into the MCU seems a bit odd. I understand that Natalie Portman is a big name, but I don't necessarily think you have to elevate Jane Foster to that level, especially when the movie is about Thor. And the other thing that I'm worried about is because this is the fourth Thor film and they might want to continue on, they might try and retire Chris Hemsworth since they obviously retired Iron Man and Captain America already. But I don't necessarily subscribe to that idea. So I think this is going to be interesting moving forward. Now, this movie is going to be coming out on November 5th of 2021, which is relatively close considering that Thor Ragnarok just came out in 2017, I believe. So, actually, it's not that close. It seems a bit closer than it actually is, but we will see. So again, that's 2 years from now, and they came out and they did their little explanations and stuff like that. They're gonna it's not really known exactly what the plot is going to be of this movie. Again, it was just officially announced a few days before Comic-Con started. Now we actually have the panel, but it pretty much confirmed most of the things that we knew. There were a couple little things that we didn't. Now, the other thing that we have is we have two other TV series, and then after that we have the big surprise announcement that nobody was expecting. Now they have a Loki series, which apparently is supposed to follow. If you watched Endgame, it's supposed to follow Loki after he escaped in the 2012 timeline that they travel back to. So that is going to center around him. The original Loki from 2019 or 2018 is dead. He was strangled by Thanos at the beginning of Infinity War. So that's going to follow him, and they didn't state exactly. I don't remember if they stated exactly how many episodes are going to be in that series. But aside from that, then we move into the Hawkeye series. Now, this is concerning to a point because they haven't cast the actress yet. But they stated that Kate Bishop is going to be in this movie. Now, again, this is a similar thing to the female Thor, where Kate Bishop was a stand-in for came in for Hawkeye in the comic books and replaced him for a little while. Was not very popular, and then proceeded to kind of nobody really cared. What I think would have been a better choice is if they decided to make Hawkeye's daughter into the new one, since they kind of set that up a little bit in the beginning of Avengers Endgame, where he's teaching her how to shoot an arrow and she manages to shoot a bullseye. So I think that would be a much better way to do that. The series, Jeremy Renner is signed on for the series to reprise his role as Hawkeye, so we will see how that goes. Now, that big announcement was the addition of Oscar-winning actor Mahershala Ali as the new Blade. So they announced this. I don't think anybody was really expecting this, and nobody was really talking about it. This is the only really big surprise. They saved it for the end because they kind of knew that most of the other stuff they had either announced beforehand or most people knew about to some extent. But this was interesting. Now, they did not reveal if this is going to be a new Blade film or if this is going to be a Disney Plus series. I would assume it's going to be a Disney Plus series, but I wouldn't rule out a film. And I know Marvel and Disney will probably not do this, but if you did a Blade film and you didn't rate it R, I don't think it would work. And I don't necessarily know if that extends to the streaming service as well, if they can get away with more on the streaming service and they're willing to compromise a bit more. But if you do a movie, it should be rated R, and I think that would be a relatively good way for Marvel to foray into more adult oriented content. As opposed to the kind of the lighter tone of the PG-13 films. And this would also be a way to kind of get back to a more serious tone as opposed to some of the other Marvel properties. The other thing is Blade is very much removed from a lot of the Marvel universe in certain senses. So to tie this into the MCU would be very interesting because I don't know if they could license out certain characters because of certain deals and stuff with Sony and other companies. So it's going to be very interesting to see how this develops going forward. Again, I think we'll get more information about it at D23, along with the movies that were mentioned but were not officially announced. But this was the big one for the night. This was something that nobody was really expecting. The rest of the conference was relatively known, or relatively I wouldn't say unimpressive, but not a shocker. Let's put it that way. Um, like I said, out of the properties that we knew were coming out, I personally think Eternals is the most interesting one, since it explores something that we really haven't seen. It's a lot like a Black Panther in a way, that we're seeing something that hasn't been put to screen yet. You know, when we first get to Wakanda in Black Panther, it's Black Panther is one of those movies that's very much removed from the MCU in many cases, except for the catalyst to begin the movie, where T'Chaka is killed in the beginning of Civil War. So uh, that pretty much covers the majority of the panel, the announcements of the television shows, as well as the films and various other properties. And I have to say, I probably give this like a 5 or a 6 out of 10. I wouldn't say anything wowed me aside from the Blade announcement. But everything else was pretty much par for the course. And the only other thing that I found kind of interesting was that they did not announce any sort of Avengers movie. Now I know it's very soon after Endgame, but it would be very interesting to see if you know who's going to be that next team of Avengers, because most of the original Avengers are either retired or dead. Tony Stark is dead. Captain America is retired. Black Widow is dead. They've stated that Hulk apparently has permanent damage to the arm that he used the Infinity Gauntlet on, so he's probably out of the picture. It seems like Hawkeye is going to be retiring to some respect, so he's probably out of the picture. Um, and Thor is the only one who seems to still be active in any kind of a film aspect. So it's interesting that we didn't hear anything about it, especially because we got a little bit of a teaser that was almost spot on with a lot of the stuff that was announced before, except for a couple exceptions. So I don't know. Again, maybe they're saving that for D23. I don't know, but it would be very interesting to see. So uh, aside from that, I think we've covered everything. So if you'd like to put your thoughts in the comments, were you excited for any of these announcements? Were you surprised by anything? Do you plan on watching these shows or these movies? Is there anyone in particular you're looking forward to? Put your thoughts in the comments. Again, I'd like to know what you're thinking. Hit the bell for notifications, hit the like button, subscribe, and remember, I live my life free of compromise. Do you?